PhD candidate in this department at UB. I'm also the president of EERI, and it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Manish Kumar. Dr. Manish Kumar is a postdoctoral researcher in this department at UP. He got his bachelor's degree from Indian Institute of Technology in Kanpur, India. He got his master's and PhD degrees from UB. His PhD research focused on investigation of the feasibility of seismic isolation technology to nuclear power plants. He's currently investigating the effect of aircraft impacts on base isolated nuclear power plants. He's also a licensed civil engineer in the state of California. With that, I give the floor to Dr. Manish Kumar for his presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Oscar. Yeah, so this is more of a hands-on workshop. So although I have a presentation, it's like only 10-page slide just to introduce general non-linearity and SAP. So what we'll be doing today is just going step by step, doing everything that we require to perform non-linear dynamic analysis in SAP 2000. Many of you would already be using this for some of your courses and research. And considering the time limit I have, I did not try to go in much deep into that because you can go as much as you want in these things, So this would be sufficient for you to perform all the general non-linear analysis required, like response spectrum as well as time history analysis and the parameters. What kind of parameters you need to use to get appropriate results. Because the thing with non-linear analysis is that you can get different results based on different parameters you use. So what is the appropriate parameter and how do you know if it's the correct value to use for that analysis? So the outline of this presentation and this workshop is that I'll just give you a 2 or 3 slide overview of what kind of non-linearity we can model in SAP 2000. And then we would be going step by step through modal analysis, pushover, then response vector, and finally response history analysis. Now non-linearity was 2 different kinds. One is geometric non-linearity, the other one is material non-linearity. In SAP, they provide you option to, and geometric non-linearity might also be aware, like P-delta effects. Now SAP allows you to use a different kind of P-delta effects using different modeling techniques. So this one right here, well, if you apply an axial load, most of the time if you're just analyzing your structure for very low axial load, or low horizontal lateral load, P-delta effects are not that important. But consider a structure which has very large axial load, these effects become important. So if you see right here, this is the contribution of the moment due to this lateral load H here. And this is the P-delta effect. Now depending upon the magnitude of this axial load, this can be substantial or can be negligible. So if you're doing analysis in which you expect large axial load or large lateral deformation, you might want to check if these these P-delta effects are substantial or not. And there are 2 types of P-delta effects. One is P-delta effects just using this lateral deformation here. The other one is also, SAP provide you option to model with large deformation. They are basically different in terms of how you solve your equilibrium equation. The first one is much more computationally efficient, while the second one with large deformation, the equilibrium equations are solved in this disform configuration. So what happens, if you do have P-delta effects, what is the effect on your response? So right here is the base shear versus lateral deformation of a building. So if you have H here and the lateral deformation here, you can see if you have P-delta effect, it leads to softening in your behavior of building. And it would lead, so there's a geometric stiffness contribution of this axial load, and it will lead to some softening. Whether it's substantial or not, you'll have to check. So, as I said, there are 2 types of P-delta effects that you have available in SAP 2000. First one, the geometric stiffness is formulated at the beginning of your analysis, and SAP uses the same stiffness matrix throughout the analysis. So it does not need to formulate at each and every step. With large deformation, I personally feel unless you have to simulate collapse or something like that, it's not really required. I mean, SAP would need to formulate at each and every step in the deformed configuration, and it's really computationally expensive, and you're not going to get much accuracy out of it compared to just using P-delta. So this one is, in what cases this is P-delta plus large deformation are useful? Well, when you have like, three simultaneous ground motion, vertical ground motion as well, or some cases in which vertical load is varying substantially, then you might consider using this P-delta plus large deformation and see how it goes. So the third one is second one is the material nonlinearity. So you saw the geometric nonlinearity. Let's say how the SAP models material nonlinearity. So material nonlinearity you can model. I mean, how do you know the structure? I mean, if the structure does yield, how do you know it's going to show nonlinear behavior? Where does this nonlinear behavior comes from? Well, it's in yielding. Many of you know it's from the yielding in the structure. Now there are different ways to model yielding in the structure. When you have like a moment frame or portal frame, you can simulate the formation of hinges at the end of beams or end of columns. Those hinges basically what you can model. And so the first one is the concentrated yield, and those are modeled as like at hinge points at the end of the frame members. And those are appropriate if you are just modeling like maybe moment frame buildings or simple with either concrete or steel. And you don't need to model because once there's a formation of hinges, they basically all the nonlinear behavior are concentrated at those hinges. So second one is distributed plasticity, which you can give like more accurate than concentrated yield. The results are more accurate, but it's not. I mean, the difference is not substantial, and it's more for if you want to simulate component level behavior. Alright, so these are the only two kinds of nonlinearity, and then there are different kind of parameters involved in this one. So let us just go and start with a simple model in SAP, and I'll go along with you guys, so you guys can model on your computer and I'll model on my computer and we'll compare the results. Yes?
Do you mind if I ask a question?
Yes,
Okay.
please. Anytime if you have any doubt or question, just ask.
I have no experience with SAP. I've used STAT before.
Yeah.
You'll go through just a couple of the basics really quick, maybe?
Yeah, so in the beginning I'll just go through modal analysis. Whatever you do, you'll have to, if you do a dynamic analysis, you'll have to perform modal analysis.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. You can go step by step, and it's not very difficult. I'll choose a very simple structure. So, all right. So let's start SAP. Look into your computer and see. How many of you guys are taking the structural dynamics course? 2, earthquake engineering 2. So you might have to do some bridge analysis and everything, right? So it might be useful in that as well, because I did that course and you needed to do all these things step by step. So it might be useful in your course as well.
A lot of us are in base isolation.
Base isolation, yeah, it would be useful for that as well. This one?
It's too late now.
It's just configuring this app. I don't know. Now there's a cancel option. I don't know the cancel. Is it? Should I cancel it or?
No.
It's going to want to restart your computer in a minute.
Just hit no, and that's when it comes up. Hit no.
No. Okay, so there are different way of modeling your structure for analysis in SAP. Let's just go and I mean, focus is not on modeling complicated structure. It's just like analyzing for the non-linear response. So you can start by using new model, and then there are different templates that are available here. You can choose any of the templates here. If the templates are not present, you can just use the grid only here. So you can create grid in 3 dimensions, and then you can build your own members like frame members or area members. So today we're just going to do the 2D frames to show you. This is a portal frame, and you can, in the beginning you can specify what do you plan to have your, how many stories, how many bays. Actually, let me just, do you guys want me to use US units or the international units?
International.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You can change it. Even if you're using international, you can just change here, right here. There are different type of units, and it would be changed in all of your analysis. So it does not matter at any point of time. You can change it. So let's go new model, and we'll create 2D frame. Number of story would be 3. Number of bays would be 2, and the typical story height is 3. You can increase, decrease it, and the bay width will be 6. I'll just make it 3. Alright, so there are 2 windows here. One window, you can increase the number of windows by adding a new window, or you can just keep one window by closing this window here. So once you have that, the first thing, see the tools bar here, they have tried to put this in, try to organize in a way that you go step by step. So first thing is defining different materials, section properties, all the group section cuts. Second thing is once you have your a section defined, material defined. Second thing you would draw those frame elements or area elements of your structure, and then you select them and assign whatever the properties or for different members. Then analyze, finally display results. You can design if you want to design, and then there are different options, right? So we have our structure here. These are the different views that are available here. You can just use any of those. So I'm going to use XZ here and make this 3D. So right now, you can see the support here is pin supported. How do you know? Well, there are different symbols for those ones. So right now they are pin supported, and if you want, you can go and assign. We are going to assign it as a fixed support. So joint, restraint, and then you can see this is fixed support, this is pin support, roller, just normal. So I'm going to assign a fixed support which is fixed in all degrees of freedom. So I selected my those base nodes and then assigned the fixed ones. So now they are fixed. Now, second thing is that you have to define load cases and assign loads at different points. So for today's tutorial, what I'm going to do, I'm going to assign a lateral load and vertical load. So I'm going to select these 3 and go assign joint loads and forces. So you can see there are different. Dead load is always predefined. You don't need to define any new load. So when you define dead load, you can define in X, Y, Z. Well, this is a dead load, so it will be in negative Z direction. So let's just say we apply 100 kilonewtons, right? So you can see the loads are applied 100 kilonewton in vertical direction. We are again going to select it and assign joint loads, forces, and if you want, you can create a new load case here. So let's just say we create a lateral load case. The load type is, well, there are different kind of load types. You have dead, live, quick, wind, C-state, other. This is other. And because dead load includes a self-multiplier for self-weight 1. Lateral load doesn't need to be multiplied with any self-weight multiplier. So just lateral, other, and then add this pattern. So we'll add the load pattern. And this is in what? Horizontal X direction. So we'll apply 10 kilonewton. And then, alright. It's pretty easy, right? So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to show you how the P delta effects actually, P delta affects your period of the structure. Now, if you go to load case,
Could you stop for a second? I'm sorry. I haven't used this in a while, so I'm falling behind.
Okay, that's fine. I'll just wait for 2-3 minutes. If any of you have not finished, let me know. Yes.
Also, I think you signed those lateral loads to dead.
Did I?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll repeat it again. Let's go here and then select those nodes, go joint loads, dead load. Yeah. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to assign both loads again, and because it is replace existing loads, so whatever loads that's there, it's going to replace it. So -100 in vertical direction for the dead load, right? And again lateral load. Select the lateral here, horizontal direction. This is it. Now, at any point of time, if you want to see what kind of loads are assigned, you can go display, show MISC assigns, and if it's applied on the joint, you can go joint, and so load assigns joint, and you can see what kind of loads are assigned on those loads. So let's just say I want to see what kind of dead loads are assigned on those loads. See 100. And similarly, you can go again and see the lateral load as well. Okay. Everyone is finished up to this step?
Yeah, just one question.
Yeah.
Your lateral load, you assign that as what type?
We created a new load case that is called lateral.
Yeah, is that a live?
Well, it can be live, it can be earthquake, it can be anything. I mean, it doesn't have to be one. I mean, if you know it's of type earthquake or that kind, you can assign it to that.
Okay.
But you can create your own load case. So I just created my own load case as lateral.
Okay, and what was the cell plate multiplier?
Multiplier for what?
The cell plate?
0.
Okay, cool.
Only dead load and some of the live load might have like maybe 25% of the self weight. I mean, not. I think only dead load would have self weight multiplier. Except that, I don't think even live load would have self weight multiplier, because live weight is like chairs and like people and equipments and all those things.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So once we have now, these are the two materials that are available here. So this is the 4000 psi. This is concrete. You can go and see the material type. You can change the name here. I mean, make it concrete or whatever if you like. And you don't have to use those materials which are available here. You can just use, I mean, you can assign your own properties if you know your material is different from this. So this is concrete. You can assign weight per unit volume and modulus of elasticity, and then you can just. And this is the typical steel material, right? So you can go and modify and show. Again, you can change the name to steel. And again, there are different properties. I'm not going to change any of those properties. So if you want to assign a new material, go add new material. And actually, you can use different countries have different kind of material specification. Now for US, we have ASTM, and there are different codes here. So you can choose any of the material here, right? And then you can choose grade 50. Let's just say 500. You can see there are different grades here. And then there are different countries here as well. So in every case, you can just go and do a user-defined material as well. So if you do a user-defined material, you'll get a pop-up window, and then you can assign everything. So if you know a new material that you need to use for your analysis, you can do that here. Right? So once you have your material defined, what are you going to do? Second thing is section. What kind of section it is? Whether it is a beam. I mean, if it's a beam section, wide flange beam, or the tube section, or what kind of section it is. So right now, it's the default section, which is FSCC. You can see the property of this section here. And you can change it if you want. Again, all those properties. Now, right now, these beams have their own self-weight, right? What SAP does, if your structure has self-weight, it calculates and assign those self-weight to these nodes. So it lumps those masses at these nodes and it does analysis. If you want, if there's additional joint nodes, or dead load that you need to assign, you can assign on these nodes additionally, going to these joints, selecting these joints and assigning joint masses, and then you can assign masses. But for this one, we don't need to require. Alright, so materials defined, section properties defined. What is our mass source? You can create, where does your mass in the structure come from? So the mass source you can calculate for elements self mass and additional mass. And also if you define load patterns, like I said, if you define a distributed load pattern and want it to be included in your analysis, you can check this one as well. And you can also specify what percentage of that dead load you want in your mass. For today, we don't need to use this, so just gonna do this. And then there are other things which are not required for most of the times, and I will come back to these things later. Next is defining the load cases. So once you have your structure defined, how do you make sure that what kind of analysis is performed? So by default, dead and modal, they are always created once you create a structure. And then lateral, because we created a lateral load case, again it is created a load case for that. Now, so this is the modal analysis and these are the parameters here. So you can see it is using eigenvectors and Ritz vector. There are two types of vectors. If you don't need to perform dynamic analysis, you should be fine with eigenvectors. But you need to use Ritz vector if you are performing dynamic analysis and you need to capture more response. So the research has shown that Ritz vector traditionally captures more response than the eigenvectors. And then you have, these are the advanced parameters. Unless you know how to, what are the effect of those parameters, you just leave them unchanged, right? So these are the number of modes. How many modes do you require? Well, for this case, we'll just say, well, it will require 10 modes maybe, right? Okay. Second case, what we are going to do, we are going to create a modal, same case, but with P delta effects, right? So, but for need to do that, what we do, we first create a linear static case, which is dead load, or we can just add a new load case. So, to include the P delta effects, first we apply the dead load, right? And then we use stiffness from that one for any subsequent analysis. So let's just say I create a new load case for P delta. And then this is a static, there are different kind of analysis. So this is a static load, yes. We'll have to do non-linear because P delta inherently is a non-linear effect. And then you can assign as a P delta right here. Now, dead load, you can assign just the dead load, multiplier as 1. And then we'll assign again a modal case called modal PD, which refers to P delta effects. And we'll use the stiffness at the end of non-linear case P delta. And we'll see how much difference does it make in the periods of the structure or the dynamic properties of the structure. Again, we're going to use 10 modes. No parameters need to be changed. Okay. So are you guys fine up to this point?
That stiffness was P delta?
That stiffness was here. So if you need to include P delta effects, you can first do a static analysis and use a stiffness from that step to perform your P delta effect. Yes?
You said the Ritz vectors had an inherently more accurate response.
For dynamic analysis, yes, they capture more response.
So why are we using
We'll use when we're going to do the dynamic analysis, we'll change it to Ritz vector and then compare the results. Okay, so once you have load cases defined, what are you going to do? Now see that this is this is a two-dimensional frame, right? You can also create three-dimensional frame. But what you want is the result only in this direction. You don't care about the perpendicular direction. So you can actually go in analyze and set analysis option, and you can assign that this is a planar frame. It's just more efficient. You won't get unnecessary modes in the perpendicular direction because this is a planar frame. So see, this is in, you have your axis here, x, z direction. So available degrees of freedom are x, z, and rotation about this y direction, which is going out of the plane. Even if you don't do this, it doesn't matter. It's not wrong or anything. It's just that you get more results that are relevant to you in this case. So we're going to do click planar frame, click OK, and then click this button, which is right here. This is small play button, or you can go analyze and run analysis. Now you see there are different load cases here. You might not want to, each time you might not want to run each and every analysis case. And so what are you going to do? If you don't want to run some cases, just click on that, run, do not run case, or run, do not run case. But this time we're just going to run all of them and see, compare the results. Okay. So let's just go here and click run now. So we need to save the model, and we'll call it model. So the analysis is done. What we are going to do, going to display the deformed shape. So go to display menu, click on show deformed shape, and then model. And once you from the pull down menu you use model, then different modes, mode number 1, 2, whatever mode you want to see. Okay. So this is here. Now the second window here, you can click on, make it active, and then I can display show deformed shape, and we'll do model PD to compare the results. Right? Now, right here, do you see any difference in the time period here? There's a very small difference. First one is 0.103, second one is 0.104, which I would say not substantial. So for this load combination and this structure configuration, this one did not have substantial difference on the these. The difference is like 9.65, 9.58, not much. So you can imagine the pre-delta effect here would not be substantial. If you have your structure and load configuration that results in substantial difference, then you can you would need to include that pre-delta effect. I mean, we will include pre-delta effect anyway, but this is just to assess how much of pre-delta effect there is in your response. Now you can also go and click on a window and do start animation and swap through different modes. So mode 2 is this one, mode 3 is different. This is typically what you learn in structural dynamics, right? Similarly for this one. Right? So the differences is still very small for all the modes, right? And you can keep going. I don't think. Yeah, now it start exciting the vertical modes because you have three story, first 3 modes are in horizontal direction, and then it starts exciting the vertical modes, right? Alright, so this is modal analysis. Second one is pushover analysis. Now this is, not static but non-linear analysis. So before we start this analysis, you will have to define all these parameters, geometric nonlinear parameter, and p-delta effects, and material nonlinear parameter. All these things needs to be defined, right? Okay, so you're going to click here on the unlock model, and unlock your model so you can modify it for the next analysis. So everyone is with me up to this point, right? So in order to define material nonlinearity, what we do let's just say we select these beams right here. And this is the important step that you will need to do for any structure to define the non-linearity. So select the beams right here, go to assign, frame, and then hinges. Okay. So these hinges right here, you can, what does this mean? Hinge property, it means it will automatically calculate from the section property what would be the hinge behavior, right? So, and the relative distance is where do you want to assign those hinges. So what we are going to do, assign those hinges at the end members, end points of those members. So at relative distance 0, which is the end I, and the relative distance 1, which is the end j. So both end of the member. So let's just go and keep relative distance 0 and then click add. Now, when you click add, this window will appear. And this is where you basically define your hinge properties. Now, there are already different codes that you can use to define your hinge properties, like FEMA 356, which is appropriate for steel members. There's also Caltrans flexure hinge. And for each code, there are different kind of hinges. So you have concrete beam, concrete column, steel beam, steel column, and then steel braces, right? And then for each type of hinge, you can specify what degrees of freedom do you want. So for typically for beam, if it's bending around, it's a strong axis. This degree of freedom is M3, right? And now this is a beam, so you can check because we are trying to assign it to beam. So steel beam flexure, primary, M3 degree of freedom, and we're going to click assign. Right? Second one, and this is not yet complete. So second thing we are going to do, we are going to assign the hinge again at the second member end, second end. So we are again going to have the same thing, M2, M3, steel beams, flexure. So we are assigned at each end this point, first point, and the second point, similarly for this beam. So when I click OK right here, and once you have assigned, you can also because this is from the code, but let's just say you did some testing in your lab, or it's still ongoing testing, and you find out that those behavior is not what you expect. You can actually go and define your own, which I'll show you how to define in the menu, your own hinge behavior. But we're just using from the code to simplify this analysis. Alright? So you can see these hinges, the green dots here. So now the hinges are defined.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Can you explain again why we choose M3 rather than M2?
M2, well, let me just show you this one.
I think the question more is what is the difference between the two, M2 and M3?
M2 and M3? Well, so M2 is right here. If you can see, when your beam is in this orientation, it bends around M3, right? That is the strong axis. And M2 is basically the vertical bending around its weak axis of the beam. So typically you design, when you frame the structural members, where does your bending occur in a beam? If this is your beam, your bending occur in this direction, right? You don't design it to, well, you can. You can also assign it here. It's just that typically the hinges they are designed to form hinges in the M3 direction. The orientation is right here. So hinges is bending in the horizontal, around the horizontal axis, and M2 is the bending around vertical axis. It's up to you. You can also go and again go to the same member and assign those hinges property in M2 direction as well, right? It's just that there won't be any hinge formation there. Right? So you can do both of them. But make sure that you do assign M3 because there will be hinge formation in M3. So M3 is the strong axis. That's just keep in mind. Okay, so once we define on these, I also told you that you can also go and define hinges here. See, if you go section properties, hinge properties. So let's just say you did not want to use all those predefined hinges. You can go and add new property for hinge. You can go steel, concrete, user defined. If you use steel, it will give you some predefined values for the parameters, whether you want to define axial, shear. Now, just keep in mind typically what is the hinge formation. You need to have some background, but if you just keep in mind, most of the times it's the formation in flexure, so it's the flexure hinge. There might be formation of shear hinges, torsional hinges, moment hinges, and interacting, but that's only when you know what's going on detailed structures. Typically for most of the analysis, what I showed you should be sufficient. Right? So you can define your hinge properties, your user defined hinge properties if you need to. Now we are going to go and assign the same hinge properties to column as well. And it's nothing more than anticipating if there's a possibility of hinge formation either in steel or beam or column, you need to assign the hinges. It is not going to affect your behavior in any way. If it does go in non-linear range, then you can see some non-linear bumping at those points. So you can define even at middle point, it doesn't matter. At any point you can define. So select all the column members, and same thing, go assign, frame, and then hinges. Again same, auto, add. Now this time same table, but this is steel beam, not this is steel columns, not beam. So you are going to go steel columns and flexure. And for column you might have P, M2, M3 interaction. You might have read that in your concrete design course or steel design course. But we are just going to use M3. Again, as you asked, you can again go and define the M2, P, M2 as well, all hinges. But they are for this case, I feel that they are. I know for positive that they are not going to form any of these kind of hinges. If you feel that they are going to form that hinges, you can come and define. So steel column, M3 hinges, flexure. Okay. Again, put one to assign at the other one, and then add. Same thing, column, flexure. Okay, so you can see green dots everywhere. So now there are hinges defined at each member ends, right? And if there's a formation of hinge, you will see that in your analysis, right? So now let's just go and define a pushover analysis. Pushover analysis is required to get an approximate capacity of the structure, overall global capacity. It is also used in displacement-based design, which you might or might not have read, to get the use capacity spectrum with your pushover analysis. Okay, so add new load case, same thing, and we are going to call it as push. Again, pushover is a static analysis. It is a non-linear analysis because you are trying to simulate the non-linear behavior, and you are going to use P delta effects. Now, if you want to include P delta effects, you can continue from the previous case, P delta, or if you don't want to include P delta effects, just use zero initial condition, right? But we are going to use this P delta effect, as I said. It doesn't do you any harm or anything, so just use P delta load case, non-linear P delta. And the load pattern we are going to be applying for pushover is always acceleration in x direction. And if you assign -1, so it's SAP's convention, it assigns, it will push the structure in positive x direction. It just does it that way. So acceleration here in x direction, scale factor is -1, and click add. Now the load application, you need to also modify those parameters. Load application here is full load. We are going to make it displacement control. Okay? Because if you have displacement control, you can specify specify up to what deformation you push the structure. If you want to see it go in the non-linear zone, let's just say we are going to use monitor displacement here and magnitude, so load of 1, and in horizontal direction. Now you can specify at what joint do you want this to be displacement to be monitored. So if you are saying you are going to push this structure up to 1 meter, at what joint? So you have this joint, this joint. Well, I'm going to use joint number 12, which is the right topmost joint. Okay. Think here. Now, by default, it's just save the final step. If you want to see the curve, you'll have to modify this as well and do multiple states. It will show you number of steps here. If you want more resolution, assign more number of steps. I'm just going to leave it to default values. Okay. And then there are non-linear parameters. Now, keep in mind that if there's lots of non-linearity in the structure, when it's yielding, your structure is yielding, it might not show you the accurate results. So you might have to redefine those parameters to get a better convergence and accuracy. And these are the typical, this is a simple structure, but if you have a very big structure, that means there are lots of local distribution due to information and everything, and there are convergence issue, you can come here and modify these parameters. So I'm just showing this to you for future reference if you really want to modify these parameters. I'm just going to leave it to different values. Okay, so my pushover case is defined. Everybody is fine up to this point? Okay. So now we are going to run our pushover analysis. So it's still showing from the last step. What we are going to do, display, show the form shape. So pushover, remember we saved 10 steps. You can go to step 1. This is the first step. Now, the important thing in the pushover analysis is to get the overall pushover curve, which is a curve for the base reaction right here, total base reaction versus the monitor displacement, and the hinge results. So you can see right here, display, show static pushover curve, right? And you can see your pushover curve here. Right? The typical bilinear behavior. This is how a structure yields here. And you can go, customize this graph if you want. Now there are different capacity spectrum, as I showed you, method as well, to see what is the capacity of your structure. These are some advanced topic, you might not have done it yet, but if you just click on here, it will show you another graph superimposed on this one. So you can see the capacity of this structure is much, much larger than what is required. So capacity is, if you see the capacity of this one, I don't know whether I can show you any of these. If you see this graph here, which is a typical response spectrum curve, you can see at which point it is, and that is called the performance point. Okay? So just for now, for your users, just keep in mind, this is the pushover curve that we can get for the pushover analysis. And second is the hinge results. Now, remember, if you want to see the hinge formation here, can you see the pink dot right here? What is this? This is basically the hinge here. Now when you define a hinge, there are different kind of, remember, performance criteria. IO is the immediate occupancy, LS is the life safety, and CP is the collapse prevention. Okay? And these hinges are basically located here. If you wanna go and see what are those hinges look like, you can go to section properties, hinge properties. If you click this will show you all the generated hinges at different points, right? And then you can modify, show the property, and you can look at what has been defined from your code for each hinges. And this is the behavior that have been defined. It is defined as a moment versus rotation, right? So you can go and typically see for each section what is the hinge property. I will also show you. So this is the first step, right? As you keep applying load at the top, let us just go to the next step. See, there are 2 more hinges formation here in the second step, but they are still in the immediate occupancy, so we are safe. Again, 2 more hinges formation at these beams, right? So if you keep going to the next step, you can see the formation of hinges at different points. Again, see the color changed from this pink to blue. So it has gone into immediate occupancy to life safety. more formation of hinges and the changes of color at each hinge as well. So this is the last step.
Can you do the animation?
This is, I think, the animation for the step 10. This is not like so if you go to different step and you start animation. Basically, this is acceleration load that we are applying, right? And showing that animation is mostly useful for model analysis to see that in what mode it is vibrating. Right? All right. So next thing what we are going to see, if you need to investigate at each different hinge, you are going to go display and show hinge results, and you can see whether there's a hinge formation or not, and up to what point those hinges have been loaded. So this is a hinge formation. If you go here, you can toggle through different hinges that have been defined. If you want to go to a base hinge, maybe it would be one, I think. Yeah. So this is basically the bi or trilinear behavior of hinges: plastic rotation in the horizontal direction, moment in the vertical direction. You can go and superimpose on the hinge that was defined, and you can see it has gone up to this point. And then right here. So the hinge defined was this backbone curve here, and the blue line is the actual behavior. That is what's called. And you can do this for any of these. So you can just keep an eye on the blue line, and you see how those changes. So when there's no hinge formation up to this point, vertical point is elastic, so there's no hinge formation. But if you go and see if that elastic point is exceeded, that means the non-linear hinges have formed with those things. And you can see those dots here that you are seeing here. Basically here, so the first one, blue one, is the immediate occupancy. Sorry, the big one. Blue one is the life safety. Then this sign one is the collapse prevention, right? So if you do your project or any time, do any kind of work, you will need to show these things to your either in assignment or for your assessment as well, how these hinges are formed in the structure, how the mechanism is formed in the structure. So pushover is the first step. Next step is the response spectrum analysis. Right, so yes. Yeah, so let us take a break at this point. There's some refreshment Basit has arranged for us. Thanks for Basit, very generous.
Yeah, guys, right down the corridor in the student office, there's some coffee and cookies you can have. I don't want the coffee to get cold, that's why. Thank you.
How much time will it take us?
10 minutes, we'll continue again.
Okay, so two things are remaining: response spectrum. Start the response spectrum analysis now. Alright, so let's, so once we are done with pushover analysis, let's start, let me just open the door. So we will do the response spectrum analysis now, and then I'll take you all the steps that are required for response history analysis. So it's similar to any other analysis cases, but for response history, you need to define what? Response spectrum, you need to define what? Response spectrum first. So we go here, define functions and response spectrum. Again, there are different predefined options that you can choose from, like ASCO.
I'm sorry, you said define what?
Define response spectrum. So go here, functions, right? Response spectrum. Right now we'll define the response spectrum. When we come back again for response history, we'll define the time history. Okay. So response spectrum analysis. And as I said, there are different code options available. So if you're performing your analysis for any specific code, you can choose that code. There are many international codes as well. For today, we are going to use IBC, which is International Building Code 2012.
That choose function type to add is grayed out.
Where is that?
Oh,
Sorry, what?
never mind, I forgot unlock.
Okay. Yeah, you need to unlock more. So we are going to use the IBC. Once we select the IBC, we are going to click Add New Functions. Now, this response spectrum is specific for each location. So each different location in United States would have different response spectrum. Now you can specify those locations based on longitude, latitude, or zip code, or you can define just the parameters that are required, which are SS and S1. Let's just say that you do not understand those parameters, or you do not know the value. You can just go and specify the zip code, right, and get the values. Now, so we are going to name this function as response spectrum IBC. Okay. And it will show you, for each and every location, it will show you the graph right here. So this particular response spectrum, the maximum spectral acceleration is 1.5 G. The PGA is around, I think, yeah, PGA is around 0.6 G. And I think this zip code is in California. If you click on that question mark, it will show you different. So
Put in 90210, that's the
That's what I picked.
that is what?
It was a TV show about a bunch of kids from California.
San Diego
It's a joke.
22055.
It's an American joke, sir.
Alright, I don't get it.
Me too.
I'll just use the default values. I'm sure we can make story on this one. Okay, so you can specify this zip code. You can also specify the Buffalo zip code, 14260 UB, and then you click. Remember, always click question mark after you specifying, and it will modify the response spectrum. For this one, you can see New York right here. Okay, you selected zip code. PGA is 0.05 G, which is very low, and considering remember when we did pushover analysis, we saw that our structure was really, really strong. So I want to excite it with very, heavy ground motion shaking. Okay, what was our last pin code again?
90210.
All right. Is it in California?
Yeah.
With high seismic
Beverly
hazard?
Hills.
With high seismic hazard?
Yeah.
Probably.
What, 90?
210.
Alright. Yeah. 0.65, good enough. California. Okay, so once you have response spectrum defined, click OK. This is basically one way of applying seismic load, defining response spectrum. So we've defined the function response spectrum. Click OK. Next thing we are going to do is the define response spectrum load case. So add a new load case. We'll call response spectrum IBC, and load case type is here response spectrum. And now again, so as you know, if you do a modal analysis, response spectrum combines different modes together. Now you can simply add those modes, or you can say yes.
Before you just did a P delta load, now you're doing an earthquake load. That's what you're doing.
For P delta is an effect, it's not a load. So you can include that effect in any of your analysis.
Right.
Right, so you can include for response spectrum. I don't think there's an option. What you can do though, you can use the modal PD.
Okay.
It just requires the modal results. So you can either use the modal, which is a normal without P delta effect, or modal PD. Right? So these modes, different mode 1, mode 2, you have to combine different modes in modal analysis, right, to get the results. Now there are different methods to combine those modes: CQC, SRSS. We are just going to use CQC. If you prefer to use any other modal combination, you can do that as well. Now, there can be directional combination as well. So if you have two directional loading in a 3-dimensional structure, you can combine them using SRSS or CQC. But because for this case, we don't have, we just have single direction, horizontal direction loading. no directional combination is required. I'm just going to leave it like that. Now modes, whether you can use from, as I said, modal simple case without p-delta effects or modal PD. This would have made a difference if the p-delta effects would have been substantial. But I'm just going to use modal PD. And acceleration type, it's always applied, response spectrum applied as an acceleration load type. In U1 direction, this function as we defined in the response spectrum, RSIBC, and scale factor. Remember the response spectrum that we defined was in G values, acceleration of gravity value. If you need to convert it to regular values, I mean meter per second square or whatever the unit that you are using, you need to multiply with the value of G. For our case, 9.81. And then add. Next thing is assigning damping. Typically, we use 5% modal damping. If your structure is not, if you don't want a response spectrum applied at 5%, you can specify 2%, 8%, 10%, up to you, right? For steel structure, typically damping is less compared to concrete. For concrete, 5% is a good value. This is a steel structure, 2% is more reasonable. I'm going to use 2% damping. And I'm going to use constant damping for all modes. There are also options to specify different type of damping. Remember mass proportional damping, stiffness proportional damping, or Rayleigh damping. These would be more useful when you are trying to investigate response in time history analysis. For this one, I'm just going to use 2% damping for all modes. Okay. Alright. If you want to do specify additional parameters, there's some global coordinate which is not required. If you don't want to apply it as a perpendicular simultaneous in U1 and U2, you can specify U1 and you can specify at what angle to U1. So if you want to specify some arbitrary angle, you can specify the angle here. We're just going to specify horizontal direction. Okay. Alright, so this is say if I assign it correctly. Yes. Okay. So this response spectrum load case is created. Right. We are going to do here same thing. Analyze. We don't need pushover this time. Right. So we are going to do not run case. We need this one, and if you don't need these things, you can also do not run case. Remember, for IBC, we did need modal PD, right? We did not need modal, so you can again assign do not run. Right now because it's a small model and analysis is not that big, so you are fine even if you run all of them. When you have like multiple cases, you might have to run very selectively the analysis that you want. You asking something?
Yeah. What's the difference if I modify the damping ratio when I define the spectrum?
So every spectrum is defined for a particular damping value, right? Typically in codes and everywhere they are defined for 5% damping value. So let's just say how the response spectrum calculates the response of a structure. If you have a 2% damping in a structure, you would want a response spectrum for 2%, right, to get the response. If damping in your structure is expected to be around 5%, you would want the response spectrum to be defined at 5%. Remember, for concrete structure, damping is more around 4 or 5%. Typically, for steel structure is 2%. So if you know what your structure is, what's its properties, what's the typical value of damping expected, you can use or specify that damping value. So whatever the response you want to get for the particular structure, specify damping corresponding to that structure.
So why, when we define the response spectrum, we didn't modify the damping ratio become 0.02?
Where you make the
also the option on the top, you can choose the damping ratio.
right here.
Response spectrum.
Okay, let me see. Oh, you're saying this one, right?
Yeah.
So this one is from the code, right? This is what you are seeing right here. If you want, you can do 2% as well. And I think it will modify your graph a little bit. Now, what you define here is not what damping value what is being used for the analysis. that damping value overrides this damping value. Okay, so even if you define 5% here, you can see the spectrum, but finally, for the analysis, the damping value that you defined there for your analysis case, that would be used. I mean, I don't know whether you guys know or not, there are different formula. If you have damping even at 5%, it can be converted for different damping using a ratio, beta ratio. Okay, so it's up to you. Even if you define 5%, that is fine. It's just to look at what is the typical graph here. But finally, the damping value you need is for your structure, and you define it in the load case.
So that one is just for user to visualize.
Yeah,
Different
yeah.
load.
This is just for you right now to visualize the graph. Make it 2%. That's fine as well. You can do the analysis again by changing, and you can see there is no difference. Alright, so response spectrum case is defined. Now we are going to do run analysis. We are going to do pushover analysis, response spectrum analysis. Let's just do run. Now. It's showing model shape. Let us, if I want to see deformed shape, RSIBC, this will show me the maximum deformation, and you can check at different nodes, 5.7 millimeter, 4.4 millimeter. If you want, you can also show the loads, forces and stresses in the frames and cables, you know. If you want to see shear of the RSIBC, that is the shear in the perpendicular direction that we are not analyzing. So shear 2, yeah. So you can see the shear value. If you hover over each of these members, it will show you what are those values calculated. The base shear is right here. And if you right click on any of those members, it will show you the shear diagram and the moment diagram. And this is not just specific for response spectrum. This could have been done to any of the cases that are defined, dead load, live load, any of those. So if you want to check for that, you can also define the moment. So you go and see moment. Yeah, you can see the moment in those values. Is there anything else? And again, I did not show you, but you can export all of these results in tabular form. Many of you already know this, but just giving you a. You can export the model definition right here, or you can export the analysis result here. Let us just say that we want to check the base reactions, okay? And we just want to export the base reaction. Just click this one, and you can specify for what load cases do you want the base reaction to be exported. So just response spectrum, okay, and when you click OK, it will show you the result here. So you can see the base reaction maximum is 18.96 kilometer, and moment as well. And if you want, you can export these results in an Excel file. Okay. So current table, so export to Excel, and it will export all your results in Excel file. Okay. So you would need to do that when you are doing your project or anything. Okay. Is there any doubt to this point? These things are not very complicated, you know, it's just a matter of going through them step by step so that you have those things in memory when you do your analysis. Okay, now the final one is the time history analysis. So we have finished up response spectrum analysis. Now let's just go and do the time history analysis. So just like what you did for response spectrum analysis, for time history analysis, also you would need a ground motion, right? Either ground motion or the excitation in any form. So you will need to go to again define, first unlock your model, go to define, go to functions, and time history. There are two functions which are already defined, but you don't want that.
So this is the earthquake.
This is the earthquake, yeah.
So,
Time history analysis. So this is earthquake, if you don't want to do earthquake, this is a time history transient analysis. You can also do regular loading like cosine loading or sine loading, that kind of thing.
So the first one was P delta, then you did spectral, and this is, so what's spectral? That's not earthquake?
No, spectrum is also earthquake.
Okay,
So that's also analyzing earthquake. This one is a more detailed analysis.
gotcha.
Spectrum, response spectrum is a more simplified way of doing it.
Yeah.
You know, this one is a more detailed when you are actually analyzing the structure, getting the actual response.
Okay.
Now there are different ways you can get your function. Most of the time, what we do, we get it from file. So you have been provided ground motion file, which has the time value and the acceleration value in the some format. I mean, different ground motion are different. They are available in different format. So you're going to click from file, and then when you do add new function, you can do browse file, and you see you have a time history function. So there are different ground motion right here. Okay. Click on any of those. I don't know what format they are in. I mean, let me see if I can. Because you would need to know what format your ground motions are in. Trying to go to that folder and see. These are time history functions, so I don't know.
Manish, you can select the program.
Okay, so this is basically in a format that's been given to you. So these are basically the data, just the acceleration values at 0.02 second, at an interval of 0.06 second. First two lines are just text or the header that you don't want to be included, and next the subsequent lines are the actual acceleration values, right? And those values are in units of g. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So when you go to here and open it, it will ask you in what format so these are the values at equal intervals of 0.02, right? And we want to skip 2 lines because first 2 lines were header. And let me see if I can display the graph. Okay, so yeah. I just wanted to show you because most of you guys would be actually using these kind of ground motions, you know. So I'm going to call it ground motion GM. Okay. Let's just say it would have been in time and function values. So first row is a time, 0.05 seconds, 0.1 second, and the second one is that of acceleration values. You would have clicked that. Okay. And every time you click that, you should click the display graph so you can actually visualize it. Let's see what is the maximum value. Yes.
Just if you can tell them, so if the ground motions are to be scaled, they're scaled separately and then used in SAP.
Yeah. So I mean, these ground motion right here, they are just whatever is in natural format, like your natural ground motion. If you need to scale them, you can scale, use a different software for scaling, and then use that ground motion. This is any text file, a general text file. Amplitude scaling can also be done here, as I will show you later. So we have our ground motion right here. So we have defined function required for time history analysis. Next, we are going to actually define the load case, which is called time history. We will call it TH1. This is our load case type, time history. You can perform as a linear or non-linear. If your structure has non-linearity, or if you want to capture non-linear behavior, click non-linear. Now non-linear can be modal or direct integration. Modal is much faster than direct integration. Okay? So when we're going to use the model This modal nonlinear analysis is also called fast nonlinear analysis. Okay, and it's much more efficient. Now, if your structure has limited nonlinearity at fixed points, like for this case, where did we define the nonlinearity? At the end of members, right? And those nonlinearity is defined to be only generated at those points. You can use modal and nonlinear analysis, and it will give you very accurate results. Consider that when you are typically you never run just one single time history analysis. You do multiple time history analysis. And if you do 30, 40 time history analysis, it takes a lot of time to use direct integration. Although direct integration is considered to be more accurate, modal time history analysis is much more faster and can give you better results in very less time. So we'll use the modal nonlinear time history analysis, and we'll also use the direct integration time history analysis. We'll compare the result and see what are the differences. Okay. So I'm going to call it TH1 modal nonlinear. Okay. And use modes from case. Again, if you want to include the pre-delta effects, you can use modal PD. Load pattern, it's always applied as an acceleration, and here is the scale factor. Now, scale factor you can choose it to use as 9.81, or if you want to amplitude scale it, you can just multiply it with 2 and then add it. It will be 19.62, but for this case let's just 9.81. Okay. Now the other parameters. Number of output time steps. So how many steps do you want in these results? Remember, this is not related to accuracy of the result. This is just at what step do you want your results to be stored. Okay. So if you want to be stored at every 0.1 second, you will multiply it with number of steps here, 100 times 0.1, which is 10 seconds. So your analysis is up to 10 seconds. Let's just say to get more resolution of data, I do it 0.05 second, and then I do maybe 200. It will give me results up to 200 times 0.05, which is what, 10 seconds again. Then modal damping. What damping do you want in your system? Now, time history is a good analysis case where you might consider assigning mass and stiffness proportional damping. Okay. So either you can use constant damping for all modes or mass and stiffness proportional damping. Remember, for this case we are doing modal nonlinear analysis. So I think it's better if we use just constant damping for all modes. For the second one, when we are going to use direct nonlinear analysis, I'm going to use the mass and stiffness proportional damping. Now when you use those kind of dampings, you would need to specify your dampings, and you need to understand, you need to go through the theory behind it. You need to assign the damping for different modes, right? Or periods, up to you. You can assign based on modes. So let's just say you assign for first mode, I'm gonna give 0.05% damping, add, and then maybe fifth mode, I'm going to assign 5% damping, and then add. So for first mode and fifth mode would be assigned 5% damping, and then all the damping values in between would be calculated from Rayleigh damping formula. Okay. Now you can also do, instead of doing modes, you can do periods. You can say that, well, if my damping would be based on a period, if there is a period of the structure is 1, I'm going to assign 0.05% damping. And if my period is 0.1, I'm going to assign 0.5, 0.2, you can change it later. Right? So these are the different options. For this case, let's just use constant damping for all modes. Did you want to note down or something? And this tutorial would also be available as a video file later, so you can, if you guys miss something, you can actually go and follow that up, right? Alright, now the nonlinear parameters. This is a modal non-linear analysis, so there are not many non-linear parameters, but still you can assign what is the convergence tolerance. Many times if there are lots of non-linearity in your structure, you won't obtain like good convergence, so you might have to change these values. Right now, see, your force would be converged if its difference between the actual force and your iterative force is 0.1 into 10 to the power minus 5 seconds, right? And you can choose how many iterations do you want, what is the iteration limit, convergence factor, all those things can be assigned later. Okay, so this is our time history case, which is modal nonlinear. We are again going to add a copy of this load case, but it would be direct integration, right? And in direct integration, you can assign all the free delta effects, nonlinear free delta effects, which is much more detailed. Right, so let us just sign free delta effects right here. And we will need to continue from the end of free delta loads that we had applied in the beginning to include the free delta effects. Remember, to include free delta effects. For modal case, we could use modal PD, which was the modal analysis using free delta results. For this case, continue at the end of free delta loads, and that will be included in this analysis. Okay. Rest of the things we are going to leave it like that. Now, when you do the nonlinear direct integration, there are some additional nonlinear parameters, like what kind of integrators we are going to use, Newmark, Wilson, all those things. More you study about all these nonlinear analysis, you come to know about all these parameters. Unless you are comfortable with the parameters and you know what you are doing, unless you know what the Newmark integrator is, what actually integrator is, what it does, just leave it to default value. Once you know that, well, this is the integration and what are the integration parameter and what are the effect of it, then you can play with this parameter, right? So usually HHT method provides good accuracy for different range of nonlinear parameters. And then there are these again parameters. What is the convergence that you want? What is the tolerance of convergence you want? All those advanced nonlinear parameters. Even if I explain you many of this, you still won't be able to understand because there are lots of theory that goes behind it. But I'm just letting you know these parameters are there and you can actually control them. Or if you're not getting enough convergence, you can actually come look at these parameters and change them to get the convergence. Okay. So these free delta effects, I'm going to leave the damping value to mass and stiffness proportional damping, as I said. So these are the coefficient values. You can specify the damping by frequency as I did before. So for the first mode, I'm going to assign 5% damping, and second parameter is calculated by assigning frequency 5%. And when you specify that, it will automatically show you the coefficients here. Okay. You can also specify damping by period, just like the last case, or direct specification of the damping coefficient. So my two cases created, one is a modal time history, and second one is a direct integration. Now we are going to run this analysis. You will see typically compared to other analysis, these analysis take some time, not the FNA or fast nonlinear, but the direct integration. Any question up to this point? Let's just run the analysis. So you can see it takes some time to finish.
The scaling was done because the text file is given in Gs, and you need
Yes.
to match the units.
That's true, yeah.
Okay.
So it was given in G, but let's just say you wanted to scale it by 2G or
Right, right.
1.5G, you can still use the 1.5G times, 1.5 times the G
And the
value.
reason this is taking so long is because it has to
Only
go
the
through
direct
that,
integration.
it has to go through the.
Yeah, the direct integration, it takes a long time. I don't know, yeah, this is taking a long time. I don't know whether I will be able to. what I'm gonna do, it doesn't look like it will finish, so I'm going to reduce the times, total time of analysis, so we can see the result for this one. Okay? I hope I don't lose this one. So I'm just going to open the file again, reduce the total time of analysis, maybe 2 seconds or 3 seconds, so that we can get the results in our time frame. And I hope it has saved my load cases. Yeah, it has. So go to time history analysis. This one as well, and the total time okay, this is another thing that you can do. So right now the tolerance for convergence is what? 10 to the power minus 5, which is very low, so it will keep iterating until you get that value. How about we just reduce it to 10 to the power minus 3, right? And we can also specify maximum iteration that you want. So these are the things that you need to do. I mean, let's just say this one was taking 1 hour. You did not have time to do 1 hour for each analysis. You had 100 of analysis. So you come here, you will change your tolerance. So now it will converge at much lower value and much greater value. So, and the total time is right now 10. We'll make it 4. 2. So 400 times 0.05 to 2 seconds for this analysis. Same for this one. This one is already.
It looked like you.
Again, iterative convergence tolerance, let us make it 3.
Is that, do you want to increase that number or reduce it? If you're
We
decreasing
want to
it-
increase it. If you want really accurate results, you want that difference between the actual result and the iterative.
No, I mean the time steps on the, go ahead, set that. to
Yeah, I did not
30.
change it for this one, I just.
The other one, though, you increase the number.
Yeah, it increased,
So that
I
would-
thought it was 10.
Wouldn't that take this, run the simulation a little?
That one is a fast non-linear analysis, so it's not affecting your time that much, but I will make equal both of them. I thought that was 10 seconds.
Today.
Make it 200 is 1 second, I don't know if I can. Make it equal. And, okay. Let me see if we can finish this. How much time does it take? So why is it, do you know why is it taking such long time? Even if you have direct integration, but if you perform linear analysis, it won't take that time. But because, okay, good. Because we have defined non-linearity in those hinges, it's taking that long of a time. So how do we get the result? So what is typically required for a time history analysis? you require response spectrum at different points, you require displacement history, and I'll show you how to get those results because those are also important. So let's just say for this case, I'll define uniform shape, model, and you can define at what time do you want. So let's just say I want at 1 second or 0.5 second. I mean, you can just specify that because it's what the time. The analysis goes from 0 to 2 seconds. You can define any time in between to get the force and the stresses or displacement in the structure. So let's just say I do 0.2 second. It will show you the deformation, which is U1 is 0.9, which is it's a lot, 92.6 mm, right? And here. Similarly, you can go, so on the left side, let us compare the result from the both nonlinear, fast nonlinear analysis and direct integration and see how much difference does it make. And we'll also draw response spectrum for both of them and time history for both of them and see. So, deform shape at 1 second. This one is display, deformed shape, but this one is time history, direct integration, and at 1 second. Look at this. Because that was fast nonlinear analysis, so it did not capture all the nonlinear behavior, but in this one, it has already captured all these mechanism formation. Okay. Let us see the history of, so what we are going to do, display, so response spectrum, let me first get, what is this? This is node, joint 12, and this is joint 4. So joint 12, display, show response spectrum curve. Okay. So you can, here's the response spectrum curve that you can see at this point, and you can specify which parameters you want to be plotted. Let's just say I want the period versus pseudo spectral acceleration to be plotted. So I change that to that. Direction, I want it to be next direction. Damping, it will show you multiple values, but I just want for 2% damping. So delete the value and delete all those values. Okay, so just 2% damping I want. And yeah, anything else? No. And then if you click display, it will show you the response spectrum. Right? Well, because it's period, let's just say I want my, where are my axes? Options. I want it to be arithmetic, not log graph. Okay? Or not log linear graph. And the scale factor. Because your results are in what? Meter per second square, because we converted that. If you again want to convert it to G value, you can actually divide 1 by 9.81 and multiply with the 9.81, and it can again show you this value. Similarly, you can go and get the time history at this point. So hinge results. This is change this one. Okay, this one I think only went up to 0.5. So we'll change this one 0.5 as well. again, what do you want? The response history at each point, what is the displacement and everything. So you click on that point, go to display, and show plot functions. Okay, we saw last step, response spectrum. On this one, we'll click show plot functions, and you have joined two already selected. What you're gonna do? You're gonna click on define plot functions, right? And there are different options here. If you want to create acceleration versus time graph, you're going to go to acceleration, add joint displacement forces, click on add plot function, and then you can specify. So let's just say specify absolute acceleration in x direction on joint ID 12. I could have just modified it. I'll just modify this one. So that's absolute acceleration in x direction, joint 12. Okay. Right. So you have to click on this one and add it to vertical function right here, joint 12. Okay. And in horizontal direction, you want to be plotted it against time. You can plot it against different things as well. And then you're going to click on display. Right? So you can get your values right here.
So that's the displacement history of that.
That's acceleration history of that one. But if you wanted displacement, you can actually go join, modify plot function, modify plot function, and you can specify you want what displacement. I'm just going to create joint disp. Okay? Create a new thing instead of just overriding that one. And then, well, overrided that one. And this is, you can get the displacement. Now I see there are very high displacement and acceleration values. It might be because that file might be been given in not G value, regular values that you multiplied with range.
Yeah, that was in sections.
Yeah, so we need to multiply it with different G value. But I mean the process still remains the same, right? And you can get all those. So like this, you can create any, you can define any plot function, add new plot function, energy function, base function like base reaction or anything, frame forces as well, and you can create all those things. So frame forces, add plot, what forces do you want to be plotted. Okay. So this is very important to plot those results. This is actually how you extract results from the time series analysis. For this one, because there are hinge formation, let us go and see what are the hinge results are there. So if I go display, so hinge results, you can see the hinge is already yielded at this point. And because it's a reversible analysis in both directions, you can see that it has gone in both directions, not like the pushover. And you can see this for different. For this one, if you right, so you can see at 0.05 seconds it has not yet yielded. As intensity of ground motion increases, and if you follow through the time step, you can see there's a formation of hinges. The hinges formed first at 0.3 seconds, which is you can expect where the large ground motion intensity was, right? Let me just. So up to this point, is there any question? Even not related to this, if you want something additional, some results that you want to be generated from this, I can show you how to do that. I've shown you how to generate spectrum at each node, displacement or acceleration history or the force history at each member or the point.
Tell them about the loading combinations, how to incorporate those.
Loading combination, you can come here, and this is the load case that you, sorry. this is the load patterns you can define, right? Sorry. Yeah, load combinations. And you can define different load combination. By default, when you design the member, it will define some load combination. For dynamic analysis, at this point, when you do the full non-linear dynamic analysis, you don't need those load combinations. Load combinations only you need when you are designing a member. Okay, for analyzing a member, load combinations are not required. So if you want, you can define a new load combination, maybe 1.2 dead load, or you can, and you can define how they are need to be combined. Okay, 1.2 dead load, 1.6 live load, and you can get results from this linear combination in your Excel file. Okay, but for analyzing, this is not really required. So let me just check my time history function because something looked wrong there. So you have to read the header of those first. So see, the header is here centimeter per second square. I thought it was in G value, so I used the 9.81. But because it is centimeter per second square, and our unit is in what? Meter per second square, what factor do you need to use in load cases where we define G value? So,
Not 98.
time history, not the 9.81, right? So what value will define to convert centimeter to 0.1, right?
0.9.
These values are given.
Can't you just switch in the lower right-hand corner, can you just switch the whole thing?
No, I'm just talking about this is, our ground motion file was in centimeter per second square. So whatever value you are using here, you need to use scale factor according to that. So I'm using the unit system kilonewton meter, right? So I'm using in meter, the values were given in centimeter. So I need to multiply it with 0.1 to convert that from centimeter to meter per second square. If it would have been given in G value, how do you convert to meter per second square? Multiplying it with 9.81. So let's just multiply 0.1 and modify. Okay. Same for the second one. And now let's run the analysis. Alright, so I just want to plot response of load point so that you can see it. So what is that 0.5 second displacement here? You can see the x displacement is what? U1 is 0.0078. Let me see how much I get here. 0.0038. So I think it's of value that we plot the response history or displacement history of both these 2 points. Right? So how do we do that? I just showed you how to get the results for a particular node, right? So what I'm going to do, go display, show plot function, joint 4, define plot function, and I want displacement maybe, yeah. So joint ID, I will define it as 4, absolute displacement, just general displacement, 4, and this one was 4. This was for modal nonlinear case. I hope I get that. And I'm going to again define another one. But this one would be for time history. Okay. So add plot function, sorry, not the load function, but not the displacement forces. Again the load ID 4, displacement, modify show plot function. I'm going to join 4, direct integration. Okay. So I'll remove this one, add this one, add this one. So now two functions are added on the right side. So the vertical you have two functions, in the horizontal you have time, and it has display these two functions. So you can see they are very close. Can you see here? Oh no. There are two of them, right? One is red, one is green. They are almost matching, but at peaks, you can see the red one is larger than the green one. Okay? The red one is what? Direct integration. So direct integration captures the peak much better than the fast nonlinear analysis. So you can see even if you do different kind of analysis, they show good results and good comparison. There might be some differences in peaks value, but that's also due to damping and everything. So you can compare like this from anything, displacement, acceleration. It's very useful tool if you go here and compare anything from here. Did you guys want me to show you anything else related to this, or like plot something or do some analysis, different analysis option? Or anything that I've showed you up to now, is there anything that you want me to repeat or is not clear?
So the P delta was simply you apply your own
It's an effect.
defined, you
Yeah.
apply your own defined lateral load,
Yeah,
and you get the response.
yeah. See, P delta effect will always be there, in your
Well,
structure.
right.
It will always be there. It's up to you whether you want to include it or not, whether it's substantial or not. As I showed you, right here, what is P delta effect? You can see if you apply an axial load and if you apply a horizontal load, it will always be there. Whether you want to include it or not, it's up to you. Right here you can see P delta comparison with HH, the lateral moment. If it's substantial, you might think about including it because it might give you a different result. If computationally not different, it's always a good idea to include it. And once you include it, you can include it in any nonlinear analysis load case, whether it's response spectrum, time history, or pushover, all of them. Okay. This would also be available as a video on YouTube. Okay, so you guys would have access. I understand many times if you are going through in a class, you might miss something. And if you have to use it for your analysis later, you might come back to it again and look at it. Alright. Any other question? Anything?
Manish, can you tell some people I think are taking base isolation over here?
Yeah.
And tell them how would you incorporate blading and model that? Just
So
the
base
way-
isolation you can model using link element. I don't know whether you guys are using, so let's just go and I'll unlock my model right now. So base isolation, first if you need to use base isolation, you'll need to define base isolator and the properties of base isolator. Well, if you have to define something, go to define menu, section properties, and go to these link support properties. Right? Link support properties, you will have option to define different kind of either damper or base isolator, or and even base damper, you'll have a bilinear damper, friction spring damper, viscous damper. You'll also have option to include rubber isolator, friction isolator, different triple friction isolator. And once we have, let's just say you are defining rubber isolator, you can assign different parameters, mass, weight. You can also might also assign what direction you want to fix or what direction you want to assign the properties. So let's just say typically base isolator is connected by your two nodes as a link element. You have to study the theory behind it. It's connected by two nodes which is connected by 6 spring, which represents the behavior in 6 directions. So for each direction, you might specify a behavior, what is the stiffness in that direction and what is the damping in that direction, right? Same for this one. And, you can do that for all of them. Similarly, for other friction isolator as well, same, right? Once you have defined a link element, you can go to these ones, any of the nodes. I think you might have to assign a beam here, but you can go assign joint and springs, if I remember correctly.
Oh, there's a link support option, but it's grayed out, so it's just not fully defined probably.
Links. Where is
Down,
it?
like down from below joint. Link/support is grayed out.
Yeah, these are loads. I'm not sure if those are,
But
I think you need to define a beam here in order to, so if you define a beam here. And then remove the joint constraint. Sorry, joint restraint. Delete the joint restraint here. Just make it this. And then if you assign joint yeah, I'm not sure, I don't remember how to define isolator in this one, but I remember you have to define isolator properties first. And then you might probably as a frame element or frame here. Yeah, I think it should be right here somewhere.
Stated in the base isolation nodes, like of the constituent and how to like model.
Yeah, I mean, once you define your isolator here, you might go and see like, what is the option to define the, but I don't remember at back of my head how, because I never used SAP for base isolation. I don't think so. Alright, anything else that you might want to? Yes.
I have the question regarding to the damping ratio I asked before. If I use user file to
User file for damping
no, for a response spectrum,
or response spectrum, okay?
and the response spectrum already consider the reduction factor.
Yeah, so
they
if
count.
you're using the, let me just go through and show you.
If I already
So function
consider the-
response spectrum, if you are using the user defined here,
Yes. And from file.
so let's just say your user defined was in, sorry. Your user defined was with some ratio, it was 0.05. So whatever because you will always have response spectrum with some damping value. So if your user defined whatever the response spectrum you have is with 5%, just use 5% here. Okay? If you want to analyze your structure for 2%, you can assign that in load case that I showed you. And that will calculate corresponding to 2% damping.
But it will reduce the response spectrum twice. I mean, if I export,
It would reduce. SAP will automatically do that. So here, whatever damping values you assign, you can, if you assign 5%, just use the, if you have the response spectrum of 5%, just use the same value here. Now once you have defined here, when you go to define the load case here for response spectrum, use whatever, use whatever the value you want the response to be calculated at,
oh,
right? So if you want the response to be calculated at 2%, 5%, 6%, it does not matter. What you have defined is there what you have. When you define 2%, it will automatically scale it down. Scale it up if you 2%, scale it
from
up,
that 5%.
and then it will calculate the response. Anything else?
I think time is up. We reserve this one till you have questions.
Yeah, where will we be able to find the video?
We'll hand the tech guy will hand the video to Manish and Manish.
Yeah, I mean, if you hand me the video, I can just upload. Do you need to edit it or something?
Yeah, I need to combine it. It breaks it up into parts.
Okay.
So I'll do that. If you can give me your email, write it down or
Yes.
something, and I can email it to you
Okay.
early next week.
Okay.
And you can also find the video on our website, the ERI website. UBERI, we're going to upload the video over there as well.
Yeah.
So you can find that. Well, let's thank our
Yeah, no problem.
presenter Manish, for his time. We have a small gift for him as well.